Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Update. We've got breaking news out of Bristol, Connecticut here this past weekend at the Golden Ticket Awards for 2017. And Andy, we always like to talk about these awards, right? And a lot of the awards tend to not change, year after year. We see slow change. I think that's an important thing to look at when we talk about some of these awards because, again, we talk about this all the time. A park that has friendly employees, for example, is very unlikely to just stop having friendly employees. That's why you see parks like Holiday World and Dollywood constantly at the top of that list. And, a park that serves good food isn't likely to stop serving good food. But there are a few awards every year that, are ones that we like to talk about. And in particular, there's been a couple of the major awards that over the last few years have changed. And there's obviously one award every year that is always different. So we're going to talk about a few of those major ones quickly here tonight, and also the one award that is different every year, which is the Best New Ride Award. But let's start with the steel coaster category, because this is one that changed last year, but not this year. And that, of course, is Fury 325. Dethroning Millennium Force as the top steel coaster last year. It won Best New Ride in 2015 and debuted at the number 4 spot, which I believe is one of the highest debuts for a steel coaster ever in the history of the poll. We know that the highest debut of any coaster ever was in 2006 when Voyage debuted at number 2 behind only Thunderhead, and then obviously was their runaway winner for the next 5-6 years in a row. So Fury debuted at number 4 and took over the number 1 spot last year by only a 4-point margin, which is the slimmest margin in the history of the Golden Ticket Awards. And then this year took the crown by 225 points.
That's impressive.
Which is quite the margin. So Fury 325, the definitive number 1 steel coaster this year.
Which I can't disagree with. I personally have Fury ranked higher than I have Millennium Force. So I don't disagree with the sentiment. I know there's a lot of Fury haters out there that we've begun to see, just like we had the Millennium Force haters come out of the woodwork. We've begun to see the Fury haters start showing up all of a sudden too, which I find interesting because I don't know if there's much to hate about Fury. I'll be honest with you. It's got the height. It's got the speed on that first half. It's got the floater hills, the B&M floater hills on the second half. I don't know what people hate about Fury.
It's got lateral airtime. How the hell do you do that? There's about 3 coasters ever that do that.
Like, I just don't get the hate on Fury. I personally don't think it's the best roller coaster in the world. I still think you have to talk about Maverick if you're talking about that, because I think Maverick has the complete package besides maybe the height, which I don't think it really needs. I'm still a big Maverick fan. I still have that ranked higher. But Fury, when people say it's the best steel roller coaster, I can't put up a good argument against it. I can't think of many reasons why I would disagree with them. So I think this is a really good choice for the Golden Tickets to keep Fury. And then I think it shows with the number of extra points it's getting all of a sudden.
And it's funny you mentioned Maverick, because you and I made a prediction a few years ago when we talked about the soft restraints going on to Maverick. We predicted that not only would Maverick move up in the Thrilling 32, but also in the Golden Ticket Awards. Yeah. And last year we saw it jump from, I think, the 20s up to number 12. This year it continues the climb into the top 10 for the first time in the history of the Golden Ticket Awards. Maverick is sitting there at number 10. And only behind New Texas Giant by 4 points, and then it's only 2 more points to Diamondback. With Steel Vengeance opening next year, you and I seem to agree that Maverick is one we expect to continue to climb as more people get back to Cedar Point to ride Maverick with those new restraints, because we're only talking about 2 years that it's had these new restraints. Yeah. So I think it's very, very possible that Maverick is a ride we could see up in the 6 or 7 hole maybe as soon as next year. I think that's certainly an interesting thing to look at. Another interesting thing to look at, that you and I talk about this before, and how We generally have seasoned, well-traveled ace members voting in these awards, and the awards tend to follow that. Wild Eagle winning Best New Ride of 2012 over rides like Leviathan and Skyrush. Dollywood hosted CoasterCon that year. New Texas Giant in 2010 is the Best New Ride, hosted CoasterCon. At number 4 in the Steel Coaster list, Iron Rattler, which was a big jump and a big surprise because it's generally, by most people, is not generally accepted as by most people as the best RMC. Yet with San Antonio hosting CoasterCon this year, Iron Rattler jumping all the way up to number 4. New Texas Giant still staying in the top 10. Although Iron Rattler is your favorite RMC, if I remember.
Yeah, it's not very often that one Andy Robarczyk comes into consensus with the Acer community.
Worry, because New Texas Giant is number 9 and Wicked Cyclone is number 14. So they got you in plenty of other spots.
Yeah, but it's not very often that one Andy Robarczyk comes into consensus here with the Acer community.
And Superman's number 3, so they got you in plenty.
Let's focus on the positive, Danny, here, and not the negative.
Right.
I really like Iron Rattler. I do think it's the best of the RMCs. That's no question in my mind. However, I have Iron Rattler probably at like 7 or 8. So I do feel that 4 is a bit overranked here. I do feel like I'm actually going down to Texas at the end of this month. So I'm going to get the chance to ride Iron Rattler again. And I'm really interested to see where it plays out on my rankings, because I feel currently that of my top 10, Iron Rattler may be the one that is overranked on my top 10. I really like the drop. I really like the finale from the canyon in through the tunnel. I think that's amazing. I do think that it has a very noticeable flaw that everyone always points out, that the people who have been talking about IRAT lately have been talking about the stuff on top of the canyon, where you have the overbanks that kind of kill the speed of the ride. A lot of people are pointing that out lately, that's the flaw in the ride, which is why it shouldn't be ranked so high. I necessarily can't disagree with those people because I tend to agree, even though I still rank it that high. So, once again, I like Iron Rattler. I think it's the best of the RMCs by far. But I do think it has some flaws in it that other rides are probably still better.
Yeah, so that's interesting. We'll see. And with Fiesta Texas getting another new coaster next year, I think it's time that I make a trek back to Texas. It's been 4 years now. So I think Iron Rattler will be another ride that I finally get to ride. Before we move on to the Best Park Award, much to our dismay, neither Raptor nor Manta making it into the top 50 this year. We've been spited.
You know what, Danny Miller?
Golden Tickets screwed Raptor and
Manta.
They screwed us both.
What the hell? What the hell? Who's running this poll? That's what I want to know.
Hey, but you want to hear a few rides? You want to hear a few rides that are in the top 50 that'll make you cry?
Oh, yeah. Okay,
hold on. Get ready for this. Okay, so we've got Storm Chaser coming in at number 33. And, that kind of warms my heart a little bit, though, because everyone and their brother has rented Storm Chaser, and it's only number 33.
Yeah. It's not number 1.
One spot above number 34, which is Raging Bull.
Oh, my God.
Let's Lisa Berg Bonin, one that you came out against very hard last year in the Thrilling 32. Number 40, Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. Number 41, tied with Kumba.
Hey, Koopa, that's a good ride. Koopa should be at least in the top 20 on this list.
Koopa's better than that ride.
Shit, if I take the top 5, Koopa's better than freaking Superman is.
Yeah. How about this? Whizzer had a tie for 46.
What? Whizzer is better than Raptor and Manta. This is like...
And Expedition Everest, number 49. What are your thoughts on that one?
I don't generally write it.
Okay.
Let's put it like this. When presented with going to Pandora or writing Expedition Everest, I chose to go to Pandora.
Yes, you did. All right, and let's move. Tyrone from Fantasialand, which was one of the candidates for best new ride on the Ride Warrior Choice Awards last year, and came in at number 38 in the Thrilling 32. Was actually number 21 this year in the Golden.
Okay.
So people seem to be liking Tyrone. Let's move on to the best park, shall we? Which was once again for another year, Europa Park, beating out Cedar Point. Not much of a surprise when you look at how the numbers have gone in recent years. It does seem like Europa Park has solidified that position, and it does not seem to be getting any closer. I know this is one you disagree with. This is one that I kind of tend to not speak on a whole lot because, again, I haven't been to Europa Park. For sure, the coaster collection does not look as grand at Europa Park as it is at Cedar Point. The only reason that I can think Europa Park is probably favored in the minds of a lot of the voters is the incredibly elaborate theming that it seems to have, and also the fact that they have like 12 dark rides.
Well, I've heard from a number of people that have been to, Europe lately that Europa Park isn't even the best park in Germany, let alone the best park in the world.
Yeah, people talk very highly of Fantasia. I mean, Ride Warrior Choice Awards, again, to bring those up because those are coming up soon. Fantasialand beat out Europa Park in the best park voting.
Yeah.
So that's not.
Maybe it'll take an ace trip to Germany to change that, but I don't know.
Well, they just had one though, and that's how Europa ended up taking this award to begin with here. So I don't know. Fantasialand's been adding a lot of cool stuff. Yeah. Tyrone, and then they're getting a Fly, the new flying coaster for 2018. So that'll certainly be interesting to see if Fantasialand happens to come up in there, because Fantasialand is a park that a lot of people speak very highly of. So that's I can't remember if Fantasialand was actually on the let's see, can I get the PDF up here very briefly? Andy, stall for a second while I get the PDF.
I've kind of said my piece on Europa versus Cedar Point. I don't think that's going to change next year either with Steel Vengeance, even though so many people are already predicting Steel Vengeance to be the best new ride in the history of the universe and the history of the galaxy.
Was better than that ride.
Well, we don't know yet. I think the major knock on Cedar Point is that it's the lack of the wood coaster, and I'm hoping to see that rectified in 2020. And all the longtime listeners know here that I've been predicting, a wood coaster on the beach for 2020 for quite some time now. So maybe in 2020 we see the addition of Steel Vengeance and a major wood coaster. Then there's not really much to knock about Cedar Point besides the lack of trees and stuff that you can get at the Arboretum if that's what you're into. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyways, so yes, Europa Park taking 27% of the vote, and then Cedar Point coming in at 18%. Third place with 11% of the vote is Dollywood, which again is a park that you are not too much of a fan of. I love Dollywood, but Dollywood is one of those parks that is in so many of the other categories. I mean,
but let me qualify something here. Let me qualify something that I know. Here we go. When I go to a park, I'm not going to a park for the food or for the architecture or for the trees. I'm going for the rides. If I want real architecture, I can go to downtown Chicago and take an architectural tour and get a real lesson.
Comparing the Bean to Dollywood.
Well, if I want food, I can go to New York City and go to the finest restaurants in New York City and go get food there. I'm not going to parks to get that stuff. Like that's my issue with this. I'm going for rides.
Up by Aunt Granny's, and
you don't even eat at the parks. What are you talking about?
At Dollywood, I do.
Get the hell out! You don't even eat at the parks.
Yes, at Dollywood, I do.
Every single conversation is, oh well, I'm not going to get the dining plan because I don't eat at the parks.
No, not at the Cedar Fair parks, at Six Flags parks. I don't. In Dollywood, I do because they've got some of the best food in the industry.
No, they don't. Silver Dollar City has the better food than Dollywood.
Well, Silver Dollar City came in fourth.
Well, there you go.
But Dollywood won best food and best shows, was second in cleanest park. They won friendliest park. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Acers love Dollywood. Good. Okay, let's
and
move
they're
on.
fourth in landscaping, so it would. And the water park was also fourth. So it would make sense that Dollywood would be pretty high up on the best park list. And then fourth place, with 10% of the vote, your favorite place of all time, Knoebels Amusement Park. And then Disneyland in Anaheim coming in at fifth at 6%. Shall we move on to the last topic? So we want to talk about Best New Ride, which obviously is the one that changes every year. Coming in fifth place with 6% of the vote was Wavebreaker, the rescue coaster. That's one you're hopefully going to ride in a few weeks. You'll get to share some thoughts. 7% of the vote in fourth place at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Invader, a ride that, again, I had some very positive thoughts on, and most people have had generally positive thoughts on. Coming in at 8% in third place at Fun Spot, Kissimmee, Mind-Blower. And this is one that you saw being built and missed out on by just a couple weeks. Yeah. But last weekend, I got mind blown at Fun Spot. And Mind-Blower surprised the living hell out of me. It is fast. It is intense. It is not smooth. And everything you hear about Mind-Blower is absolutely true. It is not a smooth ride, but it is a very intense ride. There is tons of airtime. The inversion is out of this world amazing. And it is, the word that we kept using was bonkers. Mind-Blower is bonkers. And I would highly suggest going to ride it in the next 3 months, because in 6 months it may be unrideable. It is quite the coaster, I will tell you that. And I don't have a problem with it being above Invader. I actually prefer Mind-Blower to Invader. Number 2, one ride that you got to ride that you thought should have been the winner, 15% in second place here, Flight of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom. And a lot of the folks who are thinking about Best New Ride and not Best New Coaster think that Flight of Passage was probably the correct answer here, even though it did not win.
Well, and we know that Mystic Timbers is the winner here. And I made a Facebook post about how I think Mystic Timbers is a great roller coaster. It's a great ride. I think it puts Kings Island into a different category, where I feel like Kings Island has slowly grown a really nice collection of roller coasters. I love Mystic Timbers. It's in my top 5 wood coasters. That being all said, I think Flight of Passage is by far one of the greatest rides I've ever ridden. Not even this year, but any time. I think Flight of Passage would rank up there in my top 5, definitely my top 10, just general rides I've been on. It is that spectacular. If you add in the queue line experience, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer if you add in the queue line, because the queue line is just masterful. It's art from start to finish. It tells a story. The ride itself is beautiful. I've said this before. I cried the first time, Danny Miller. A tear shed from my eye. It was that beautiful. I'm like, I've never cried on a ride before, except, I can't think of anything funny. Sorry. So
You didn't cry the first time that you waited 4 hours for a ride and then it was disappointing?
That was Soarin', which is ironic because
well, I was going to say, people always talk about how they cry the first time they ride Soarin'. And
it's awful. Oh, that ride is terrible.
Oh, so you didn't Soarin' at all.
So but it's because the ride system and the maneuvers it does is so much more intense. Soarin's for sissies. Avatar is taking that system and taking it and putting it to its fullest, which I think is why I loved it so much, because I was kind of expecting Soarin' and I got something that was completely amazing and just completely blew me away from start to finish. It was an amazing ride experience, and I don't know if it's because a lot of people didn't get down to, Disney to ride Avatar.
Could be.
We've seen Disney dark rides do well in the past in these Golden Ticket Awards, so it's not like there's an anti-Disney bias, although there might be a little bit of that here. like I said, Mystic Timbers, a fine ride, a great roller coaster. But I just think Avatar Flight of Passage is just out of this. It's on a different level. It's hard to even call it a ride.
It'll be interesting to see if that does make its way into the best dark ride list.
Oh, if it doesn't win, I think it's a travesty. It's by far the best dark ride. By far.
We'll see if in the next year or two, because in 5th place on the dark ride category this year was Escape from Gringotts. So, and it sounds like there's no question there. So no. I would expect maybe this is one we see contend for the best dark ride in the coming years.
Well, I mentioned the Facebook post, and I was actually surprised because I thought I was kind of in the minority of people who really liked Flight of Passage.
I doubt that you're not.
No, a lot of people have said that Flight of Passage is by far their favorite and probably should have won this year. So, I just find that interesting that a lot of people are going down that road, and I think it's completely well deserved and. It's an experience, Danny. I can't believe you didn't go do it. That you chose to go ride Manta instead. Like, come on.
Of course I did. Yeah. I chose to go ride Manta and Mako, and then the Kraken VR that wasn't working. Yeah. So obviously the winner here, Mystic Timbers, and I think that's one that we predicted long ago. We anticipated that Mystic Timbers would be kind of the only option in terms of the roller coaster rides anyways. I only got to ride 3 of the top 5 here, Mystic Timbers, Mind-Blower, and Invader. That's the order I would put them in, and that's the order they appear on this list. The other new rides for 2017 that I got to ride Hydrus at Casino Pier on the Jersey Shore. I also got to ride Gale Force at Playland's Castaway Cove, which finally opened this year after over a year of delays. I would say maybe Gale Force slightly ahead of Hydrus just for its uniqueness. But the other ride that I made a bold prediction last year, if you remember, that I thought we would see one particular ride on this list this year that is not here. And I don't know if it was just because it was the first time I was riding it, or I don't know if there's a bias against it because it's at Six Flags. I thought if there was a year that we would see one of them, that we would see the Metropolis dark rides make an appearance on the best new rides. Yeah. This was the year because we had such a lack of coasters. But Flight of Passage obviously being as good as it was, and the fact that we did have 4, coasters that were at least pretty good. Wavebreaker, again, I haven't ridden it. You'll get to ride it in a few weeks. You'll get to say whether or not it is any good.
But Wavebreaker, once again...
generally positive reviews.
And once again, it benefited from CoasterCon being down there, that people went to ride Wavebreaker. So, of course, once again, you see, that playing a factor here, where I think if CoasterCon wasn't there, I wonder if Wavebreaker would have still made the list. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. 45 plus 15 is 60, and then we have 68, and then 75, and then 81. So 81% of the votes are accounted for here. So I would have to think that some East Coast folks who got to ride, Metropolis at Great Adventure for the first time, and then your Southern folks who got to ride it at Over Georgia for the first time, and then the West Coast folks with Magic Mountain. The problem is those rides probably get counted separately. So vote there. If they lump them all together, I'm not sure that maybe Metropolis isn't like 3 or 4 on this list.
Yeah, and where did Merlin's Mayhem end up this year? Did that
Merlin's Mayhem will be on the ballot for best new ride of 20.
Oh,
okay. Merlin's Mayhem still not open. There is a lovely Twitter account at Merlin Mayhem that catalogs the entire history of this ride not opening.
Danny, I don't understand that. I don't know if they've run into money issues. That's the only thing I can think of, because it doesn't seem like a complicated build.
It's not like Lightning Rod, which you can give a follow to at Lightning Rod Op. Lightning, I think it's at Lightning Rod DW. I have to double check to see what it is. Actually, I haven't checked the Twitter feed in a while, but you can follow the Lightning Rod operation history on Twitter if you wish. It's not like it's a ride that's done and just doesn't work. It's a ride that literally is not done. Although over Labor Day weekend while down at Universal, I did see that they finally got the train on the track. So we're making progress in Merlin's Mayhem here.
Maybe it will open this year. Who knows?
So there you go. Any final thoughts on the the big three?
An exciting time again, I guess. A lot of things don't change, which is why we're not going through the full results here, because they don't change very often.
We see the evidence of maybe change to come in certain categories, but nothing huge this year.
But in theory, when you're talking about the same voters, the voters don't really change all that much in the Golden Ticket Awards. When you're talking about the same voters voting on the same rides and the same parks, of course things are going to stay the same. The Oscars change every year because it's a completely new set of movies every year that are being judged. If you threw all the movies together from all time and gave out Oscars for the best movie of all time, pretty much it's the same movies are probably going to win year after year. So it's not surprising that the GTAs with the same voting base that changes very slightly year to year doesn't change. I don't ever knock them on that because it makes sense. Why would it change? People's opinions aren't going to wildly change, back and forth every year. The Thrilling 32 and the Ride Warrior Choice Awards is a little bit different. We have different voters every year. We keep growing and adding voters from different regions. It'll be interesting to see how things begin to settle in. And the other thing is in the Ride Warrior Choice Awards that, we just created today, we created a whole new set of questions where we don't ask the same question every year. So we get different responses, which is nice.
And we've got a doozy of before we recorded these shows tonight, you and I went through and decided on the categories we will be voting on this year in the Ride Warrior Choice Awards, and we've come up with like half of those 15 park and ride categories are brand new this year, and most of them are ones we have never asked either in the history of the Ride Warrior Choice Awards or the Golden Loops. So there are going to be quite a few interesting questions, including possibly, just a little tease here, possibly the most asked question in the history of roller coaster enthusiasm.
Indeed,
I'll let you
is.
debate on what that means.
Yeah, indeed it is.
When the calendar turns to November, you will see what that question is.
Well, the GTAs are officially in the books for this year, but the Thrilling 32 and Ride Warrior Choice Awards are still undecided. In the next month.
Congratulations to Time Traveler on Best New Ride of 2018, since Silver Dollar City will be hosting the Golden Ticket Awards next year.
That seems how it goes. Which wouldn't surprise me either. We'll be putting out more information about those two different polls that we take coming out in the next month here. So we really hope that you consider participating in that this year as well. So it's always fun. Anyone can vote, not just the exclusive, not just the elite. Anyone can vote. We are the America.
Even the people that we lambast on YouTube time after time and video after video. You are allowed to vote and prove us wrong and shut us up.
Yes. So as always, thank you for joining us here on COASTER-net Update. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, right on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time, guys.